Hey friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today we're back with another installment of my Destash series. This video is going to be going over the first half of my purples. So without further ado, let's just get into it. All right, everybody, so it's another day at my desk here, and let's just get into the time lapse. Okay, and here are all of my spring and summer kind of purples. I know some of them might look, a little darker than others, but they're just the ones that I had in those drawers. So I did actually also take out all of my fall and winter kind of purples, but I have them on the floor on the side, and it looks like I have about the same, if not maybe even more than what I have here. So obviously not everything is gonna fit onto my desk. So I am just gonna have to do this in two parts again, but I don't mind since we obviously do see a lot of similarities already. Like there are some of those, orchidy, pink, purpley kind of colors that stand out, as well as the more blue toned ones up here. So let's just, kind of get started with grouping. Alrighty, so I have them organized to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, some of these purples are just kind of hard to tell where they're like mid-toned, I don't know, like I think I would say that this is a red tone purple, but it just looks like a true purple. So it's sort of in the middle here, but hopefully you can tell the more blue toned ones are on this side and the warmer ones are on this side. But just at first glance, I feel like it looks like I have more of the warmer toned ones, which is kind of surprising to me because I usually don't gravitate towards those. I could have sworn I just, would have had more of these blue ones, but I guess, I don't know, maybe I got rid of some of them already. So I do want to start by looking at some of these creams here that are the more true, like orchidy kind of pinky purple shades. This Essie I would say is like a little bit less pink than the rest, so I'm just going to keep these four here because I think these are a lot more similar. So this Essie is in the Universe from a spring collection a few years ago. This is Crack's Lavender Jade, Olivav's Rhododendron, which I thought I had in my Destash pile. I think I had pulled it out recently, and Island Peas Melted from their most recent Heatwaves collection. So I do want to put back Rhododendron. I think I pulled it out to do like a comparison with this shade, but now that I think about it, I maybe never posted it, so I will have to double check that. But yeah, I unfortunately would say that the Olivav is my least favorite just because it's a lot more muted, so I just wouldn't be gravitating towards it as much. From here, I know I really do love the Essie, which again, I know looks very pink in comparison to these other purples, but I want to keep this one. The same with Lavender Jade, and I mean, even with the Island Pea, I'm a little torn because again, these are the kind of shades that I just don't usually love. Between them though, I would rather keep the Cracked just being a little bit cooler toned. Like it's a little bit less pink. It's also a little bit lighter, though I'm not sure how well you can tell. So yeah, I'll keep the Cracked and set aside Island Pea. I also should have set aside this Essie that I put down before. This is Playdate, which, hopefully you can tell by the fill line here. This is an oldie for my collection, so I still want to keep this one. It's just a bit more blue toned or like, more of a neutral purple compared to these. Okay, so I rearranged the polishes, but I'm going to be going through the warmer toned purples next, starting with these three creams here, which I feel like are definitely the closest to each other. We have OPI's Skate to the Party, Hollow Taco's Party of One Purple, and China Glaze's Left My Heart in Havana, which I really just, I love all of these. They're not exact dupes. I would say that China Glazes is definitely the darkest, the most blue toned, while Party of One is like a little bit warmer, but still, you know, obviously in that sort of neutral category. Like it's nowhere near as warm as like other purple shades. The OPI, I would say, is the most neutral of the three, so I really love it for that reason. So hopefully you can see on the tip of my thumb there, I have one tiny swipe of each. And I guess, you know, between these three, the Hollow Taco, the one in the middle, is my least favorite just because it's a bit warmer toned than the other two. It's still a pretty shade for sure, but I would rather just, you know, keep the other China Glaze or the OPI, especially because I know I've like gone back to this China Glaze so many times before. It's just one of those like staple purples in my collection. But yeah, between the OPI and the Hollow Taco, I just prefer the OPI a little bit more. So I'm going to be keeping these two. Then getting into these like brighter, almost, you know, magenta leaning kind of purples here. Starting from the right, we have Mooncats, or, you know, my older Live Love Polish bottle, Lost Polaroids, which again is another very red toned leaning purple. You know, part of me really wants to keep this because I just love these creams, like, and this quad specifically, I think it was called the Ultra Vibrance set, is just so stunning. And I loved this one, especially alongside the other shades in that quad. But, you know, on its own, it's not my favorite. So I think I am gonna set this one aside. The only other one that's kind of close, maybe, but not really, as you can see, is this color department called Grape Soda. This one does have, I don't know if I'd say a worse formula, but it's just more of a crelly formula, which isn't always my favorite. Again, I do really like the high pigmentation of Mooncat's creams. So, you know, if it's between the formulas, I would rather stay with the Mooncat, but between the colors, honestly, I was gonna say, like, I do prefer the color department, but part of me is like, you know what, I don't really wear it that often though. And I feel like you're gonna see this is a bit of a pattern, especially with these more red leaning purple shades. So you know what, I think I am gonna set both of these aside instead of just the Mooncat, because the ones that I do want to keep, oh my gosh, Mooncat's Mood Ring. This one was, I think, a dearly departed from earlier this year, I want to say. Maybe it was last year. I would say this is probably closer to this color department shade, but it's a bit darker and just filled with those flakies. I just love this finish. I have to keep it. It is also kind of similar, but not really, to Hollow Taco's Don't Be Jelly, but this one is even more blue toned. But like if you're just wearing this on its own, this one looks very like red toned, you know what I mean? So it's always so funny when you see it compared next to other shades that have different undertones. It just pulls totally different. But yeah, so even though I know these are very similar and I probably shouldn't keep both, I want to. I also know I want to keep these shades over here. This is Cirque's Pitaya Jelly from their most recent glazed collection, and this is a super oldie for my collection. I don't even know if you can see the fill line, but it is like down to here, like a little bit below halfway. I would say this is probably one of the most empty polishes that I still have. Definitely need some thinner. It's like a bit gunky in there, but it's just a super gorgeous magenta leaning kind of jelly with these really striking cobalt iridescent glitters, called Bento Box, from the brand Loaded Lacquer, which is not around anymore, but so stunning. And lastly here is Prism Parade's Berry Goth. There's just something so pretty about this one. Probably the blue shimmer because as you know, a lot of you guys, I also just love a beautiful blue shimmer, and I think it's just so pretty against the red base. If this didn't have the shimmer in it, I would probably, you know, add it to my destash pile, but it is kind of close to the color of the Mooncat one, so, you know, I apparently am picky where it's like this exact shade and I'm okay with keeping a few of them. These other Holo Taco shades here, this one is Anti-Hero and Electric Sweetener. Admittedly, don't love Anti-Hero like on its own, but with the rest of the collection, it is just so beautiful. Like, it's just such an interesting thing where I know it probably, you know, I shouldn't look at it that way, but this is one of those few collections where it's like individually, I only really care about the pink and the blue, but the nail art potential that you get when you use them all together, it's just so perfect. So because of that, I am also gonna hold on to this one. I do really like Electric Sweetener, even though I know I gave like this collection kind of a hard time because, you know, the shimmer is a little bit more on the subtle side generally compared to like other indies, for example. Still am a fan of this combination. You know, again, it just has that blue shimmer, but this one is a little bit lighter and less berry leaning than the Prism. The last couple of polishes that I have here, I have a few Cirque jellies. I mean, this one I know I'm also keeping, another purple with a blue shimmer. This one is Bitchin' from the California Dreamin' collection, which, as you know, I love that collection. These two, though, are jellies. This one is berry jelly, and this is lilac jelly. Anything, I would say berry in the middle here is a little bit closer to pitaya, but it's just, I don't know, just a little darker. You see pitaya leans a little bit more pink, but I don't know, like, I mean, I do, as much as obviously I love Cirque jellies, I know I would rather keep lilac between these two. I'm just trying to decide if I like really need to keep berry jelly. I think I will set this one aside actually, because between these two that are, you know, the warmer tones, I would rather go with pitaya. This next one is Holo Taco's Glitch and Glam from their somewhat recent Pixel Perfect collection. Absolutely keeping that one. And these last two shades are two Island Pea shades. This is Hidden Treasure from the Under the Sea collection a few summers ago, and Unforgettable from the Splashed collection. Both of these are absolutely gorgeous. I definitely much prefer, you know, this finish from Island Pea. I'm just always a fan of that hollow jelly, you know, flaky, while this finish is more of that larger shimmer particle, almost like a micro flaky. This one is really gorgeous, but I just feel like I don't wear it as often. Even though it is stunning, I think I am gonna set this one aside because I feel like, I don't know, like the base colors of these are pretty close. And so if I wanted, you know, a hint of gold, well, this is not a hint, this is like so, those flakies and shimmers or whatever are so gold, but I don't know, I could just like layer on something on top of Unforgettable. But yeah, I feel like when I first swatched this, you know, granted it was a couple of years ago, I remember having that feeling of like, it's just kind of a darker purple for what I like for summer. So if I'm gonna keep one dark purple, I think I would rather keep Unforgettable. Starting with the ones that I know I want to keep, we have Polish for Days Lush because, I mean, duh, that is a no-brainer, and also Polish Lavender Mint, which is an oldie. This one is the one that I said is like kind of similar to Bee's Knees Dumicorn. I think the base in the polish is a little bit lighter, so you know, I just know I'm gonna keep these even though they might be a little similar. I also want to keep this Fauve, which admittedly is definitely towing the line between, you know, being a pink and a purple, but this is Frailty. It is just absolutely stunning. Everything that I want in, you know, a dainty fairy-esque kind of polish. I have a few here that have these kind of like, you know, red shimmers, and unfortunately I feel like I do want to keep them all. So these two on the left are both Island Pea. I mean, you can't really see the red shimmer in this one because it's the magnetic from the Electric Summer collection. There you can see it a lot better, but it's basically like the magnetic version of fairy dust. And so, I know I did this in my blues video where I kept Bluebell but got rid of Sky. I feel like I should do that here where obviously I'm gonna keep Fairy Dust. Don't get me wrong, Lightwave is stunning. These magnetics are so beautiful, absolutely love them. Some of my favorite magnetics from Island P. I mean, this collection just across the board was beautiful, but when it comes to polishes I'm actually wearing, this unfortunately is not one of them. So, regrettably, I will have to set that aside. The last two that I have here are more just like the true shimmers. I feel like I should have, I mean, I do have like another one here from Mooncat, but that's like more of a blue tone base, but we'll get to that in a second. When it comes to these, they are a little more similar. This is Crack's Frolicking in the Fields from the Randos collection a few months ago, and Emily Damali's Get in Line. I know you can't tell from this angle because the way that the light is hitting them, it has like that same, golden copper shimmer, but in more direct light I feel like the Cracked shimmer is a little bit more pink. It looks a tiny bit more red or just like darker in the Emily Damali, and then in extreme lighting the Emily Damali goes to green while the Cracked just stops at yellow. So there's some subtle differences in here, but they're not different enough that I think I can justify having both. And I think, just for the purposes of like space, which I haven't really talked about too much during these videos, where like the drawers specifically that these polishes are in, I mean, I'm sure you can tell the Cracked bottle is a bit larger. It's a 15 milliliter size and the Emily Damali is 12. So just, because it is a bit smaller, I think I am going to keep the Emily Damali. I mean, I do like that it is like a little bit darker and slightly more shifty. I know the Cracked is so gorgeous, but right now I only have one drawer kind of dedicated to my spring and summer Cracked polishes, and so it can fill up really fast. So, unfortunately, this one is not unique enough to stay there. From here, I know that these two are probably the most similar. This is Mooncat's Moonicorn and Sylvan Claw's Winging It, which is a little bit more pink. Granted, I probably should have like saved it for the pinks, but I feel like it's just so similar to the Mooncat one. And the Mooncat one is also kind of similar, but like a lot lighter than the others that I'm keeping down here, like the Bee's Knees or Polish. So I feel like it should be one or the other between these two. And so while I normally, would stay with the pink, I feel like it's just not pink enough. Like it looks pink in comparison to this Mooncat, but I think, wearing it on its own, it just kind of reads as a purple. And so I don't know if that really makes sense. If this was more pink, I would easily keep it, but because it's not, I'm gonna set it aside and just stay with the Mooncat one. I also know I am gonna be keeping Cirque's Lavender Sky. This is one of my favorite jellies. You can't tell probably, but the fill line, well, it's not that impressive, but it's still like above halfway. But for me, where like I don't go back and wear or rewear the same polishes super often, it is pretty impressive. So, this is another one that I'm keeping. Then I have these creams here. I mean, I know I definitely want to keep Island P's Butterflies. It's just such a beautiful, I mean, it almost looks like so pale and like whitened here, but it's just like a very soft lavender shade. I really love it. But I would say that these two are probably the next closest ones. So we have Mooncat's Insomniac and Hollow Taco's Serial Killer. I think between these, I kind of want to stay with the Hollow Taco. I feel like I've just gone back to this one more often than the Mooncat. I would only kind of grab this when I'm doing like nail art and stuff, which, I've mentioned before, right? Sometimes having like the full collection is just more satisfying, but these two, I think I would rather keep the Hollow Taco. Although, going back to that conversation about like the actual drawers that these are in, it would be smarter for me to get rid of the Hollow Taco one, because this drawer is shared with Hollow Taco, Island P, even some Olive Ave shades, so it like quickly fills up. But unfortunately, I just kind of like that this is, a little bit of a lighter and maybe cooler toned shade. So it's another one I'm going to keep, and so I can set aside the Mooncat one. Here's a holo taco I can get rid of though. This is Wild Child from the Cottagecore collection. It's just too muted for me. Not, you know, my favorite kind of shade. I mean, I know like the whole collection was muted, but this shade of purple specifically just doesn't do it for me, you know? So I can set this one aside. Funny enough, a muted purple that I do like is Island Pea's Lilac Bridges, which isn't that much different. I mean, maybe it's like even a smidge darker, but this one has that beautiful kind of golden copper shimmer. As I'm sure many of you know, or at least longtime viewers know, this is essentially what I was hoping Cirque's Fata Morgana would be, and it basically looks like the swatch photos of that shade. Because if you don't know, Fata Morgana, unfortunately, is very faded. If you actually order it, it's like very taupey, you know, still a nice shade. I do have it in my collection still. Like, look at that. That is just so, it's like so pitiful, you know, for what you expect and then what you actually get. But it is still in my collection because, you know, just looking at it on its own, it's a nice shade. Like I just love that shimmer. This copper shimmer always gets me, and especially this kind of finish from Cirque, you know, I can't help but still like it. Yeah, it is nowhere near what I wanted or expected from the photos, so Lilac Bridges is definitely going to be staying in my collection. Along with a Cirque that I am keeping, this is Ohana, which actually, where is Grab Isle of Capri, which I set aside in the blue toned pile because, as I'm hoping you can tell, it is a little bit more cooler, you know, less pinky than Ohana on the right here. You know, normally, right, I do prefer the more blue toned ones, but I love Ohana. This is one that I have like worn and reworn, even though it doesn't really look like it. So even though these are different, I would rather keep Ohana. So I am gonna sneak aside Isle of Capri into my Destash pile. And here we have a couple of cracked shades. We have Amethyst Dart Frog, which if you somehow missed it, they are going to be discontinuing the shade because the purple pigment, I think, like, you know, changed or something, and it's a bit more pink leaning now. It's not as purple as like this original batch, so, you know, kind of a shame that that happened. So a shame that Monique isn't going to be keeping the pink version around, because I saw a lot of people, I mean, I did think the pink was really pretty too, but I saw a lot of people saying that they would love to just still have the pink as like a 2.0 version. So maybe she will keep it, but from the last that I saw, you know, it's going to be retired. So I do want to keep this one. And I am also going to be keeping Lilac Frosting from the Glazed and Glossy collection. It's just kind of one of those like pearlescent shades, which, you know, I was kind of like a pearly polish hater, but Crack's version of them are just so much more flattering, and I really love this color. I think it's just so elegant and so pretty. So I'm going to keep those. And the last few shades that I have here, we have Island Pea's Sugar Cube, amped from that same magnetic collection. So that is what that looks like, magnetized. Last one here is Holo Taco's Glamethyst, which I, again, just, you know, kind of want to, well, the only one I don't really want to keep is Sugar Cube, because this one is so incredibly sheer. It was the only one that was like a little bit of a letdown from the candy coated collection for me, which is a shame because it's just, you know, so pretty, right? But it just is really, really sheer. So yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm gonna set this one aside because it's just kind of one of those that like pisses me off a little bit, you know. But between these two, I do want to keep both because I love both. Okay, lastly, let's get the lighter blue toned purples here. Okay, so here are the blue tone purples that I have. We have the much lighter ones up top, a couple of the mid-toned ones that are also just much warmer toned in the middle here, and lastly we have the very, very like blue blurple periwinkle kind of shades. down here. So starting with the Cirque shades here, we have Ube Jelly and Guilty Pleasure. So obviously want to keep the jelly, even though it is, you know, not my favorite. It is very like cool tone and almost just a bit too muted. I do like this one more compared to this one. For example, this is Haze Jelly. This one is like kissing gray, or it's like a very smoky lavender. It's nice, you know, but between these two, I would rather keep Ube, so I am just gonna set Haze Jelly aside. But Guilty Pleasure, this was one of their Vice shades. This one, you know, I actually don't really care for that much, even though it is admittedly like, you know, pretty unique to other purple creams that I have here. Like it's just warmer than, you know, some Island Pea or Mooncat creams. Maybe it is closer to China Glaze's Left My Heart in Havana, but this one is just obviously several shades darker. So, you know, I just would rather keep the China Glaze so we can set aside the Sur. For these Mooncat shades, okay, so this one is, oh dang it, is this one Serpent's Hiss? No, Serpent's Tongue, right? Or is it Sealed with a Hiss? Dang it, I always freaking get those confused. But whatever this one is, this is the Blue Shimmer Purple Micro Glitter. Easily keeping this one. This is Shattered Glass, which is just their light purple linear hollow. It's kind of, you know, similar, I would assume, to Holo Taco's Lavender Syrup or, you know, other light purple linear hollows, but I do want to keep this one. Actually, the only other purple linear hollow I have is from Cirque. This was an oldie from a collab with Smarties. This one is called Groovy Grape. I would say this is a little cooler toned, you know? I don't know if you can really tell that from this angle. Obviously, if I'm like over here, you just get flashed with the rainbow, right? But yeah, hopefully you can tell this is like a little bit more blue leaning, but very much purple because there is like a blue in this collection. So, you know, technically I shouldn't keep both, but I really want to. The last Mooncat that I have here though is Bermuda Triangle, which I'm pretty sure was retired earlier this year. You know what? I think I'm gonna set this aside. It's pretty, kind of similar vibes, you know, to like the Cirque shades. This one is Isle of Capri, but this has flakies in it. It's perfect mermaid vibes, right? Like I'm pretty sure I shared this in my best like mermaid core shades. Totally fits the vibes, but it's just, again, one of those shades I don't really reach for. So, you know, I'd rather it not take up space in my Mooncat drawer. So we will set it aside. These last few here, I mean, these two are maybe like the most similar. So this one is Olive Ave's Santa Rita, which was from their spring collection earlier this year. I actually really like this one, which shouldn't be a surprise because I do love Olive Ave's shimmers that have like the strong gold shimmer. Some of my other favorites are Partly Sunny or Calla Lily especially. So having this beautiful purple with that yellow shimmer, it's just, I don't know, it's just really, really pretty to me. So these two shades, we have Sylvan Claws Growing Impatience and KB Shimmer's My Favorite Color, which sadly is not around anymore, but you know, it's kind of a similar base to the Sylvan Claw. I actually don't remember if I compared these in my review video for this Sylvan Claw collection. Anything, I would say that KB Shimmer looks like it has a bit of a stronger shimmer, but maybe it just depends on like the angle because you do see that. But the main difference is that Sylvan Claw has these like hollow flakies, so you know, it's gorgeous and I generally really liked this collection, but I think I could just easily like recreate it by doing a hollow topper on this KB shimmer, you know? So I will do that. So I know I definitely want to keep this oldie noodles in my collection. This is Raindrops on Roses. It's like a very, very muted lavender. I feel like it looks gray on camera, but there is like a kiss of lavender in here. Let me pull out Fata Morgana for reference so you can see like that's more of a true, you know, gray taupey shade, but it just has this beautiful glitter crelly mix and like, you know, pink, white, even like light sky blue for the little raindrops and like the hollow sparkle. It's just so pretty. You guys know I'm a fan of noodles, especially these older Crowleys in my collection. I can't get rid of them. And we have a couple of these like light icy ones, but I feel like these two are maybe the most similar. Not really, but this is Mooncat's Electric Sheep, which is from, I want to say like their very first limited edition collection called Cyber Set, if I remember correctly. But it's like another very icy lavender hollow, but much cooler toned than Shattered Glass, if you can see that. And it also has this like gold shimmer in there. So I really, really like this one. So I am going to keep that. In a similar vein, but you know, not really, because it's not a linear hollow, but it does have a scattered hollow effect going on, is Island Peas Downtown. Stunning. I love, you know, these kind of finishes or formulas, whatever, from Island Pea, so I know I want to keep that too. Also, for sure, keeping this cupcake polish. This is Believe, which is one of their, I don't know if these are like the mega glitters or just like, you know, regular glitters, but it's one of their glitter polishes and just the light purple-ish one. I do also actually want to keep this Nailed It. This is Compulsion. I remember saying actually kind of similar to the Mooncat shade. The main difference is that Mooncat has like more of a green colored shimmer. Hopefully you can see it there. And this is more of that aqua blue. You know what? Technically, I don't need both. I don't need both. And I kind of like the blue more. Like normally I do like the green and purple sort of combo because it just feels very magical to me, but I don't know, there's something about like this one, this Nailed It, that really has a hook on me. So yeah, I actually am gonna set aside the Mooncat one. These other Mooncats here that I have, I know I want to keep them all. This is Into the Wishing Well, which unfortunately is a dearly departed. Something close to it is After the Rain. I'm pretty sure I did compare them side by side on my nail in the review video for this one. If I remember correctly, it was a little bit more sheer, which, you know, sometimes that pisses me off, but After the Rain is like magical. It is so stunning. It's like one of those that, you know, I just would love to have like displayed on a shelf. You know what I mean? It is beautiful. So keeping those two. Then for these creams, which I know look very similar, it's because they kind of are. This is Sweet Nightmare from the Technicolor Dreams collection, and this is Melonberry, their thermal from the Remedy collection. I kind of want to keep it, even though I know I shouldn't, because it's easily like, you know, maybe not dupable, but you can like recreate it with a gradient, or I mean, you could dupe it with a fancy gloss thermal, which is like way more affordable. Yeah, against my better judgment, I will be keeping both of these. The only one that's kind of similar here to Sweet Nightmare is Island Pea's High Dive, but this is a bit darker, a little bit more blue tone. Even though these are kind of similar, I do sort of want to keep both, but at the same time, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should get rid of the Island Pea. It's the two blobs on the bottom there. I mean, between these two, I definitely do prefer the Mooncat one. So, you know what? I'm going to keep the Mooncat and I'm going to set aside the Island Pea. Lastly, the few of these lighter ones. I mean, technically the Starly is not really that light. It just looks like it because of all of that silver shimmer, but this is another magnetic and I think it's so stunning. So I am going to keep that one too. I feel like I'm just keeping a lot of these, but I think from here, the one that I would get rid of is probably going to be this Cracked, which is one of their creams. This is Rocky Mountain Iris. I don't remember if this is one of the ones that they retired earlier this year. It's just like a very muted kind of lavender. For reference, here it is next to Fata Morgana. I feel like just putting it next to it just, you know, pulls out the purple, right? So, you know, it's a nice, soft, soothing kind of shade, but I don't love it. You know, there's other soft lavenders that I would kind of rather grab. And again, thinking of like my drawer and the retail space in there and how big these Cracked bottles are, I would rather give up a cream, you know, in place of something else. So that means I will be keeping these two Island Pea shades. This is Lily, which is another magnetic. And, you know, it is a little bit muted and dusty, which, you know, I didn't love at first because it was released for spring. And I was like, it's just so, not dull, but, you know, just, I wanted something a little bit more. But I love this for winter. I think it's just so beautiful. So we are keeping that. And speaking of, you know, a muted purple for spring, this one is Scrunchy from the Rewind collection. This is more of like a blurple kind of shade. I think on camera it's picking up way more blue, and I see more purple in real life. So, you know, it's one of those magical shades of periwinkle, I guess. And I just really love this finish. So I'm also going to hold on to it. And lastly, when it comes to the even more blue toned purples, the, you know, ones going into blurple territory, I guess I'll start with these like two really dark ones. We have Holo Taco's Made Me Ink from the Off the Deep End collection, which, you know, has those flakies, and Prism Parade's Lucid Scream, which is more of just a shimmer kind of shade. I feel like the cobalt shimmer in this is so glowy. It kind of looks like House of Hades, but here it is for, you know, quick reference, which this does have like an indigo base, but hopefully you can tell that this is even like darker than that. Like it's just more purple. So, you know, I probably shouldn't keep both, and obviously I am going to be keeping House of Hades, but yeah, there's something so alluring about this one, and I love this Holo Taco one. It's probably my favorite from the collection, so we're keeping those. These two creams here I feel like are so different that, you know, I can keep both. This is Island Pea's High Score, which here it is next to High Dive that I just, you know, set aside. Surprisingly, I normally gravitate towards these like lighter shades, right? But I don't know, between these two, I love High Score. It's just so like bold without it being, you know, neon or anything, but it's just such a beautifully saturated shade. And the Mooncat that I had here is Midnight Drive, which was from that Ultra Vibrant set, the same as Lost Polaroid. So, you know, this is like the more red tone purple, then we have the blue toned. Would much rather keep the blue toned one. It is just so stunning. I don't remember if this one is like an exact dupe, or not exact, but it's like a very close shade, I've heard, to Orly's Synthetic Symphony. I think that's the like really, you know, bold purple that like they discontinued for a while. So, you know, I know a lot of people are boycotting Orly and stuff. So if you, and even that polish, like I mentioned, is not readily available. I know this Mooncat is pricey though, but I've heard that, you know, it's like a very, very close shade. And yeah, looking at the rest of these, I feel like I just want to keep them all because they are so, so pretty. Like, I know I don't have a ton of them, right, compared to, you know, everything else you saw, but there's something about these, like, I think these are the kinds of shades that I just gravitate towards, like, over and over again, where if I am gonna wear a shimmery purple, it's usually gonna be like one of these, you know, that's just a lot more blue or like periwinkle. So I think I am gonna keep all of them. Starting with the two polishes on the end here, we have Salvador Dali, which, you know, came back recently for Rewind, and I was so excited. Let me know if you picked this one up because it is just, it's just so, so pretty. And this is Song of Storms from a very old, like, Zelda-inspired collection. This one is, you know, a little bit warmer toned, right? And it just has like an aqua blue shimmer. It does shift to like pink in very extreme angles, but you know, it's kind of on the simple side. And I think if anything, it is probably closest to Cirque's Isle of Capri, just without the holographic sparkles. So I know this polish, you know, it's just been in my collection for a long enough time that I would rather keep this one. So it is good that I set aside the the Cirque. This, oh my god, this is Cuticula's Fairy Core, another PPU shade from April of this year. Just so incredibly stunning. Oh my god, the shimmer in this. Chef's Kiss, what a beauty. This Fauve is like a pretty recent favorite. This only came out this year too. It's called Monet. The Impressionism collection, which I just generally really loved. It's just another kind of, you know, smoky lavender sort of shade, maybe most similar to something like Island Peas, High Dive, or Rocky Mountain Iris. Now that one's actually a lot lighter. Yeah, I would say it's closest to the Island Pea shade, but like a little bit more blue. Obviously with that gorgeous blue shimmer, just magical. Oh, another blue shimmer that I have. This one is also probably kind of close to Isle of Capri. This is Mooncat's Siren's Deceit, which, you know, this one is a lot more sheer, if I remember correctly. I mean, yeah, you can even like see it in the bottle, right? It's just way more thin. So it doesn't have the best formula, but I really love the color of this one. I love that it's like a little bit deeper. So I definitely want to keep that one. And here it is kind of next to some of the other ones I'm keeping, where, you know, it's hard to tell, like from this angle where you see the shimmer, it looks a little closer to the fauve, but the base is a bit warmer, so it looks slightly closer to the polish. You know what, now that I'm looking at it and I kind of realize like just how close the base colors are. I mean, the shimmer in this is like a darker blue. This one is a bit brighter, like an aqua or like almost a minty sort of color. I was gonna say, like, maybe I just will keep the polish and, you know, do a little scattered hollow topper to like recreate the vibes, but the shimmer is just so different, and I love the blue. You know what, I am gonna keep both, but maybe that will be one I revisit in the future. Oh my god, speaking of blue shimmer, this one, oh, Phoenixes Together Until the End. This is from Polish Pickup, September 2023. This one is even like more striking than the Mooncat one. So, you know, technically I shouldn't keep this one. So you know what, fine. I'll set it aside, okay? Because I know I want to keep this one. Like, look at how glowy it is, right? It's another one of those, it's like a little potion bottle on my shelf. It is so glowy. Let me see, I'll save these three for last because they all have like that green shimmer going on. This one is another of the glitters from Holo Taco. This is Lo-Fi Lavender, which looks so blue, but it is like a lavender. It's a very blue toned, right, shade of purple. So I don't know if there is like an additional shimmer in here, but I feel like it looks like it has a blue shimmer going on. Maybe that's what helps read it as like more blue than it is. I don't know, but I am going to keep it. So the last few shades here are some other classics. We have Island Peas Drive In, Lurid's A Formidable Opponent, and Cirque's Night Fever. Of these three, I know the Lurid is going to be like the for sure keep. This is like one of my favorites. I would say it is the most similar to the Island Pea. It just has more of a blue shimmer versus the green in here, right? And obviously there's, you know, reflective glitter, but as far as like the color of the base and the shimmer, I think I will set aside the Island Pea, even though, you know, again, I love this like finish, this collection. It's beautiful. This Lurid is actually in the same drawer as like most of my cracked polishes, so I think it is worth staying in there, but this drawer is like almost full. So, you know, I need to whittle that down. And lastly, for Cirque's Night Fever, I know it's like hard to tell because the blue shimmer in this is like so glowy. This one, let me see. I mean, I was gonna say maybe it's most similar to this Phoenix, but it's just a lot darker in the base color. I don't reach for this one super often, but it is so beautiful. And you know, with how dark it is, like, it's almost surprising I didn't have this in my winter drawer. Right away, it is kind of reminding me of some of the polishes in my like winter pile. Okay, so I just pulled out Holo Taco's The Price is Alexandre. I feel like this is maybe the closest, but this one is more of like a true multi-chrome. This one has like, you know, a little bit of a shift, but not as shifty, I think. And there's also a multi-chrome flaky in here. So yeah, I would say these two are, you know, the most similar, and I actually do want to keep the Cirque. I'll put aside, you know, The Price is Alexandrite for when I actually do my winter video. Now that I'm all done, let me show you what I'm going to be keeping. Okay, so here are all of the purples I'm gonna be keeping from my spring and summer drawers. I feel like I, whittled down a decent amount, but there are still obviously a lot here. Some that, may be kind of similar, like from first glance, these two mooncat shades, again, after the rain and into the wishing well, but I really want to keep both of them. If anything, I can recognize that there are a couple of like repeating sort of creams, that are very similar, like this Hollow Taco and Island Pea. Even though this one is definitely a lot lighter, it's like, should I keep both? Obviously I want to. These are like more similar. We have OPI's Skate to the Party and China Glaze's Left My Heart in Havana. But again, at the same time, like looking at them, they're so different. Maybe the two that I really should make a choice between are Essie's In the Universe and Crack's Lavender Jade. And like I already mentioned a couple of times, my cracked drawer is filling up very, very fast. So because this is a cream, I think I would get rid of it just because the Essie is the closest to it. It's not an exact dupe by any means, but just the way, my drawers are set up, I would rather save the room for like more special cracked polishes, that are like specialty finishes or whatever, like lilac frosting or amethyst dart frog. So now that we have those out of the way, let's look at what I am destashing. So I actually have the creams on this top row here and then the specialty finishes on the bottom. I'm kind of surprised that I took about the same amount of both blue and red toned purples out, because I figured, like this does not surprise me, because again, these are just kind of my least favorite shades of purple. I much prefer the cooler toned ones. There are a surprising, amount in here, and again, some that I think are still just beautiful shades, but I either already have something similar or, it just doesn't quite do it for me. So, or it's just kind of like a dupe, right? So that's definitely what I'm most happy about, like getting rid of the Sylvan Claw and the Mooncat shade, because I mean, even just these two together, again, are so close to each other. So yeah, I feel really good about this. So that wraps up going through my spring and summer purples. As always, I would love to know what you thought of this video, especially of the polishes that I took out to destash, because I know some of them are some, maybe not cult classics, but some fan favorites for sure. Again, there is a part of me that does want to hold on to some of those shades, like Mooncat's Moonicorn, for example, but I really want to be better at trying to eliminate these potential dupes, or shades that are very, very close to each other. I'm really looking forward to doing the part 2 in a couple of weeks. It won't be like a month away, but that'll go over the rest of the purples that I have, which are all of the darker fall and winter shades. And I think once that video goes live, I will have the polishes starting to go live on my destash page, which I will have linked in the description box. I originally wanted to wait a little bit longer, I think after doing like my pinks, to list everything, but if you missed it, the last round that I uploaded onto my destash, there were just so many polishes that my account kind of got flagged and some posts were being deleted by Instagram. I was kind of locked out of messaging people. So it was honestly pretty stressful to go through that. So I don't want to have like a huge backlog. I honestly might even still split up the uploading, where I'll upload the rest of the darker blues on like a Friday and then starting the purples on Saturday, just so it's not all in the same day. So just to give you all a heads up of what to expect in a couple of weeks. But yeah, let me know what you think of the color purple, because I feel like this is definitely one of the most popular colors when it comes to nail polish. I would say for good reason. I mean, obviously I'm a big fan, but let me know what shade of purple is your favorite down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!